What will you find in the darkest reaches of your mind? Come, step into my world of twisted illusion. Witness the birth of fear.
Hello again everyone, and welcome back. The Metamorph Challenge League has finally finished its run, and Delirium is about to set in. Crossing the mirror will cause the fog of Delirium to consume you. In this state, hordes of new enemies will emerge to chase you down, and existing league mechanics and bosses will mutate, getting powerful new abilities. Should you prevail, your bounty may now include new cluster jewels that will expand your skill tree even further and grant exclusive access to 280 new notables, bringing the potential of build creativity and optimization to new heights. I'll be updating all of my build guides with every necessary change, various improvements and optimizations, and a list of the most powerful and compelling new notables. Every build featured in this video will have already been updated by the time this launches, and links to the full guide and path of building URL will be in the description for every build we discuss. With that, it's time to present you with my top league starter selections for the Delirium Challenge League. I'll be covering the pros and cons of each build, the overall flexibility of gearing, and how the recent changes affected the build. First up is going to be a staple of the channel, Lacerate Gladiator. It found continued success in 3.9, despite the sharp increases in difficulty. The recent patch notes did not nerf or alter Lacerate Gladiator in any major ways. If anything, it may have been buffed with the addition of some of the new notables. There are many powerful options to consider, but one of the best may be deep cuts. This causes our impales to last an additional hit, and stacking multiple iterations of this notable will greatly improve our single target damage. Lacerate clears satisfyingly fast with bleed explosions and staggering attack speed. It also manages strong single target with the help of powerful impales and bleeds. Backing up this offensive strength is some strong defense. With a high life pool, plenty of life regen and life leech, non-stop fortify, and nearly capped physical damage reduction with our charges and flask, the build won't go down easily. As far as gearing goes, the build can be decked out from top to bottom in entirely flexible rare gear. The few uniques I have included are optional and can be replaced with a variety of alternatives, with the only exception being the heavily recommended Soul Taker. This axe provides great quality of life benefits and allows us to cram in some extra auras. It is, however, completely optional and can be replaced either temporarily or permanently with a rare axe. Leveling with this build is smooth, and you can scale Lacerate from the first act to the deep endgame. Lacerate Gladiator is both powerful and fast, easy to gear, and exceedingly well-rounded with no major downsides. If you like the look of this build, the full guide is available right here. Next up is going to be my recently released Pyroclast Saboteur. And yes, it did just receive a fairly sizable nerf, but hear me out on this one. What happens if you take one of the strongest single target skills in the entire game, one that can phase or outright kill Cyrus in about a second and a half, and then take away about 30 to 40% of its single target damage? Well, then you're still phasing one of the hardest bosses in the game in around 2.5 seconds. Everything weaker than Cyrus will still be falling exceedingly quickly, meaning that despite the nerfs, Pyroclast Mines will still be among the top contenders for single target DPS. It was simply brought back to reality, and now other skills will have the chance to compete with it. The core version of the build is energy shield based. In order to make it a more friendly league starter, I've created an alternative life based version, which you can use temporarily until you have the funds to switch over, or permanently, as the life based version is more than strong enough to take on the deep endgame. As previously mentioned, Pyroclast Mines have devastating single target capabilities. The clear speed is passable, but not fantastic. That is, until you get an astral projector. This ring will cause your Pyroclast explosions to auto-target nearby enemies, scattering the many explosions across a huge portion of the screen, greatly improving our clear speed. Until you pick up the ring, an optional arc mine setup will ensure some fast clear speed through the axe and into the early mapping. Whether the recent nerf was meaningful or not, the demand for core pieces of gear will go down. If you are among those who choose to stick with Pyroclast Mines, one of your rewards will be significantly cheaper and more accessible gearing this league, a benefit that is all too often overlooked. Defensively, both versions of the build are quite sturdy, with reasonably high life pools, a alongside high regen and high chance to evade from our ascendancies, and a decent chunk of block chance, physical damage reduction, and chaos resistance. Additionally, the build is very comfortable dealing its damage from a distance and often tends to end fights quickly. The gearing, especially for the life-based version, is very flexible. Just about every single slot can be filled with rare gear and cheap flasks. The endgame weapon can be a wand, a dagger, a scepter, a two-handed staff, or a variety of different cheap uniques. The only heavily recommended unique is that previously mentioned astral projector, and that upgrade can be put off for as long as needed. Leveling with this build is a simple process of using the mine gems available to you, beginning first with Stormblast Mine at level 1 before transitioning into Icicle Mine at level 12. You can run that for as long as needed before switching into something like Arc or Pyroclast Mine down the road. The playstyle won't be for everybody, but for those who stick with Pyroclast, it still has a lot to offer and holds enough power to devastate just about every boss out there. If this build looks compelling to you, the full build guide is available right here, and both versions of the path of building can be found in the description below. Let's move onward to our third build, another staple, Stormburst Trickster. I've just finished retouching and improving upon a few different aspects of this build. The recent patch notes will not be altering or nerfing Stormburst Trickster in any major ways. However, once again, it may be receiving a buff with the inclusion of the new notables. Channeling skills received a lot of powerful options, both offensively and defensively, many of which could make a significant difference. Stormburst is a skill that prides itself on versatility. It can boast powerful clear speed if you scatter your casts across the entire screen, and potent single target if you focus them down into one spot. Defensively, it's pretty strong, with a large hybrid life pool, both life and energy shield leech, consistent stun immunity, some block chance and physical damage reduction, and a large chance to evade, as will be blinding all nearby enemies consistently. The only significant downside of the build is its channeling nature. To deal consistent damage, especially to bosses, you'll need to be stationary for at least a brief time. Of all the builds that we'll be discussing today, this may be the very easiest to gear. Every last slot can be completely filled with rare gear, and the few included uniques can be swapped out for other alternatives. Leveling with Stormburst is fairly simple. You'll have to make do with other available skills until level 12, but from that point onward, Stormburst can be scaled into the deep endgame. If you like the look of this build, the full guide can be found right here. And with that, we've arrived at our final build, and certainly our most contentious. That build being Raise Zombie Necromancer. This build was hit in a variety of ways in the recent patch notes. I'm sure you've seen countless threads and comments, many declaring Necromancer to be completely dead, and others still claiming that it's going to be top tier yet again. However, in my opinion, the truth lies somewhere in the middle. I think they've struck a good balance of trying to make everyone happy here. Those who wanted to see Summoner fall are gonna get to see that. Summoner will almost certainly not be the very top of the metagame, but for those who still want to play it, for the first time or the 15th, it's still going to be very strong, just not quite as busted as it used to be. Leveling with this build has not been affected very much. Affected more heavily was the high end of the build. Most notably, with the recent patch notes, we'll be losing a massive chunk of our energy shield, 4 of our total maximum zombies, and the majority of our free resistances. But with the help of some absurdly powerful new cluster notables and some new specters, our individual zombies will likely be doing more DPS than before, and will still be exceeding 14,500 energy shield and life combined when optimized well. The build will survive and remain one of the more tanky and flexible options out there. The patch notes are not intended to destroy necromancers, but instead to make them more difficult to gear and require more investment from the player to achieve a similar level of power. Through the removal of all this free energy shield and free resistances, they put some of the pressure back on us. Minions are still good, but now, more than before, we have to make it happen. At its core, Raise Zombie Necromancer has some solid clear speed. Your pack of zombies will be aggressively charging around, slaughtering everything within a huge radius around you. The single target can also get pretty potent with investment. Even with the recent changes, you'll still be slaughtering endgame bosses. Defensively, the build is stacked. It won't have the absurd life pool it did before, but it can still push above 14,000 overall life and energy shield combined. This is bolstered by some energy shield regen, life leech from our minions, just about constant fortify, and a Vol discipline. On top of that, both your physical damage reduction and chance to evade will exceed 70% with flasks up. And with Spirit Offering being nerfed quite heavily, we have the chance to utilize something like Bone Offering instead, which will significantly improve our chance to block both attacks and spells. All of these different layers combining to make this one of the tankiest builds out there. Gearing is exceedingly flexible. During the leveling process, you can run all rare gear from top to bottom. Just about every unique used in the build was exceptionally cheap last league, and with the recent nerfs, prices this league will be at an an all-time low, meaning that those who play Necromancer and Delirium will enjoy much more affordable gearing than in previous leagues. Resistances will actually have to be manually covered, but this is not a deal breaker. Leveling with Necromancer will still be top tier, and you can use a huge variety of skills to make that happen. For those interested who want to learn more about this build, I have a full build guide available right here. And with that, I've covered the 4 guides that I wanted to most heavily recommend for the upcoming league. Delirium is shaping up to be incredible, with its compelling new league mechanic and ridiculous cluster jewels, expanding the horizons of what's possible in Path of Exile. Whatever build you end up choosing, I hope that you have a fantastic league start. If you enjoyed the video, consider subscribing for more build guides in the upcoming Delirium League. And if you have any questions, leave them down below and I'll do my best to answer. A huge thank you goes to all of my patrons for their dedicated support of the channel. It's truly appreciated and helps make this content possible. Special recognition goes to the following: Anlei Huang Bao, R.O. Briggs, Elixium, Andrew Miller, Bloody, Brandon Kendrick, Christopher Cravey, Christopher Murdoch, Daniel, Daniel Wigg, Darren Clark, Gareth Thomas, Greg Wells, Jacob Davey, Jaewon Yu, Ken Butler, Kurt Wood, Michael Johnson, Mick Woodney, Motimus Prime, Ray Hill, Richard Bollinger, Sabaton Babylon, Sinister Data, Stefan RCH, Thomas Pashik, Shie, and Zolaris. Thank you so much, everyone. If you'd like to be credited at the end of each of my videos, or join our Discord for Path of Exile and channel discussion, consider checking out the Patreon link in the description below. Best of luck to everyone in Delirium, and as always, I've been Esoro, and I will see you guys in the next video.